All right, I think I'm live, and I'm going to switch to just one screen. Let me turn this one off for a sec. Okay, I'm really, really proud of myself because I figured out how to share my screen on my laptop with you all. Now that's probably a really easy thing for everybody else, but to do that in a live video, you can't do that through YouTube. I'm having to use like an app interface, which is, I don't even know what it's called, b.live. And basically that connects to my YouTube studio and it allows me to do all sorts of different things with my screen. One of them is that I can share my computer screen. Now, if you can hear me, because this is an experiment and I only think that I got it right. If you can see and hear me, can you please let me know in the comments if you can see and hear me? And today's video should be publicly visible to all. You don't have to be. Oh, wow. Are the comments showing up on the bottom for everybody? Okay, Annabelle gives me a thumbs up. Thank you, Annabelle. So I guess it shows comments on the bottom there. This is cool. I might have to just do this format all the time. So anyway, hi, Cynthia. Thank you for joining as a membership. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Annabelle, for letting me know. You can all see in here. Okay, I'm so proud of myself, so excited. So I'm really, really excited to share my screen with you because I felt like that was a big hurdle. In fact, that's why the live is today and not yesterday, because I wanted to make this video a public one. So the first one of the month is always public. So it should have actually been next Wednesday. But because today is February 1st, we're going to do it today. And I had a topic for next Wednesday. Oh, yes, I know. Yes, I remember. So I'm going to announce it, but next Wednesday will be for members only. Living in Arizona, pros, cons, and things like people ask me like, what do I like about it? You know, things that are unique about it, things that take getting used to. So we'll talk about that next week. Today's topic is twofold. Number one, how to book a inexpensive flight or how to get the best rate on a flight, really, which might not be inexpensive because flights are expensive, but how to get the best price for a flight. And secondly, how to beat jet lag. If you're having a long haul flight, meaning, you know, there's like 6 or 7 or 8 hours of time difference from your destination. So I typically, before I get into it, talk a little bit personal things about our family and just what's going on. I don't do that on the public videos so much because I basically, I guess my membership is kind of like a paywall that allows me to not just have every rando on YouTube join and see what's going on. Maita, your comment shows up on the bottom there. I think that's really good. I like this format. I might have to figure out how to do this. So this only works for public videos. I don't think it works for membership videos, or if it does, I have yet to figure out how. But I like this. I like this a lot. I like this format. I think I can even, I have, so the AI automatically picks comments to publish down there. I can also disable that, which I don't see a reason to. And there's probably a way that I can myself choose a message. So I'm not doing that, just the AI is doing it. So don't take any personal interpretations of why I picked one over another. I'm not. I'm just going to let that cook and pick itself. Let's talk about what I wanted to talk about, which is how to book an inexpensive flight, or rather a flight at the best possible rate. Now, there are websites out there that have these super secret prices that you can't see, and you have to join a membership and you pay like an annual fee of $100 or $200. And when you join that super secret website, you will have access to deals that normal Joe Blow cannot see on the internet. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about how to book a flight if you were to just go on the internet and want to book a flight, not if you're like traveling all the time and you just have some super secret backdoor website where you call some secret number and they do a secret handshake and you get a secret price. So there's probably ways to get it cheaper if you find a deal like that. I've never found one that I felt comfortable, that it was legit. I know there are people who have success with them, but mostly it's for getting like really good deals on last minute luxury flights like business or first class, as opposed to just everyday economy flights that you're scheduling yourself. So I'm not saying this is the cheapest. I'm saying this is what's probably the most user friendly for the broadest audience. And if you have better tips, I would love for you to share them in the comments below. And I will look forward to that. I might learn something new there myself. So I'm going to switch right now to where I'm going to appear in the bottom right on that screen. And I'm going to share with you my screen, which is going to look weird when I first turn it on because I have to switch to Google. So let me switch to Google here. And once I switch to Google, well, here, let me just turn this on. And now it looks funky like that because it's like, okay, so we're going to go to Google. All right. And Google is a really, really, really great resource for everything, including flights. Now, right off the bat, not all flights are on Google. Southwest does not publish their flights on Google. So there's a few airlines that you will not find on here. But typically what I do is I check Google and then I check southwest.com separately and I go by what's better. But this will cover like 90-95% of flights, and that's good enough for me. So what you want to do is you want to go to Google and you just type in flights. Now, I think you can also just do google.com/flights, but basically I click on this. Yeah, it's travel flights. So it's too much for me to remember. So I just always Google flights. So I have here some examples of things I searched earlier, but we're just going to start from scratch here. So you should be able to see my mouse. Now, if you're making comments, I can switch over to that when I go here, but then it gives me this weird thing of where it's like, you know, like this mirror effect. So I'm not going to be on this window because then you are looking at yourself basically. So if you have comments, I will be able to, one second here. I'm trying to figure something out. Bear with me, please. All right, well, I can't figure that out. There is a... All right, so anyway, I'm going to switch back over here to my other screen over here. And let's see here. Let's go on here. Okay, so you can then basically, if you go to Google Flights, you can see here that you can select multiple options. So you have the option, and you should be able to see my mouse. You can do round trip, but you can also do one-way or multi-city. Now, multi-city would be if you want to fly into one city, and then say you fly into Frankfurt, Germany, and you sightsee and end up in the south, and you want to fly back from Munich. So you would select multi-city, and you would basically search Phoenix to Frankfurt for the one leg, and then Munich to Phoenix for the second leg. So that would be a multi-city. One way is obviously just a one-way ticket. But for the ease of showing how this works here, we're going to stick with round trip. Now here you can also have more than one person. Altogether, you can do up to 9, and that includes infants in lap. So like you could do 2 adults, you could do so many children, and yada yada. But if you get above, yep, they cannot support more than 9 passengers. So for the sake of this video, we're just going to do 1 adult just to see the prices, okay? And then you can do economy, premium economy, business, or first. So we're just going to stick with economy. And let's just do for grins, we're just going to do Phoenix to, let's do London. All right. Now, when you click on departure, this is the cool feature by using Google Flights, is that it will allow you, it will bring up right here the cheapest flight prices. And those are basically shown in green. And if you click forward on the calendar, it takes a minute to, get caught up and find those prices. But basically that right off the bat lets you see which days are ideal for flying. So let's just for grins say, let's go to this price right here. Let's go to 746. Once you select your departure date, you can then see what return dates are, the cost for the return dates is. So here that could be 796, 746. Let's pick a different one for flying out. Let's pick, for example, this one. And then for the return flight, say we want to be there for a week, we're selecting this one. And then we hit done. Now, what you can see here, we're going to hit search. All right. And it will here add filters for you. You can filter by how many stops, because there are some nonstop flights. So if you're like, I only want nonstop flights, you can select that. You could choose certain airlines, your bag allowance, things like that. So once you hit search, it will basically bring up the cheapest flights called best departing flights based on price and convenience. So the cheapest flight, I guess, is with 1 stop from JetBlue. Now, I wouldn't want that. I don't want to fly JetBlue. I don't want to fly with a connection when you can get a flight that has no connection. So here you would then select whether you want to fly American or British Airways. Now, these are partner alliance. So they typically have the same price, whether you book through one or the other. And sometimes you'll actually get on a flight and it's through British Air, and sometimes you'll get on a flight and it is through American Airlines. So let's say we're going to select, let's see, we're going to drop down the details. This one leaves at 7:10 p.m. and this one leaves at 8:30 p.m. And then this one, now why is this Heathrow when I'm, did I select Heathrow? I thought this was for Paris. Oh, I selected London. Okay, my bad, sorry. I thought we were talking about Paris this whole time. Okay, so this one gets into Heathrow at 10 afternoon and this one gets into Heathrow at 20 past 1. So I'm going to select this one. And it shows you some other details in here, which really are very comparable for these 2 airlines. We're going to select this one. And then for the return flight, it's going to give me the same options. It's going to give me the best options up top and then lesser options down below. So again, these are nonstop flights. Let's look at the details. Departs at 11:55. This one departs at 2:25, gets back at 6:30. So that gives us a little bit more flights. So I'm going to select that for the return flight. So now that I have this, it basically gives me the option of booking with the airline. And you can also book with other airlines who basically partner with them. So I could book this American flight through American or British Airways or Iberia or Finnair. They're all contracted with them. So I could, at that point, if you click on one of these, it will take you there. Now, don't do that yet because you're not ready to book yet. Let me check here real quick back for the okay, I don't know how to kick this clown out of the chat, so we're just going to have to bear with him, but I will ban him from the channel going forward. So Dermot, pipe down, or you are going to be banned permanently. So over here, you don't want to book yet. The point of this Google search is that we're going to save this search. Now, as a basic economy versus main cabin, here are the differences. In basic economy, you typically do not get to check a bag, and you have to pay extra to select your seat. And typically the price is about $200 difference. So you see that here, it's $200 difference, $180. And that's really typical. That's usually what it is. A checked bag is $150. So having the standard economy as opposed to the basic economy, if you are going to check a bag, it doesn't make any sense. So basic economy only makes sense if you're not checking a bag and you're fine with them giving you any seat. I have flown basic economy when it's just me plus one child and it's a short trip. So it doesn't matter if we only have a carry-on bag, and it doesn't matter if we're sitting together, or it's pretty easy to get seated together because there's only two of us. If I'm flying to Germany with all the kids, I would not select that. I would select the regular economy because that will include the seat selection and that will include checked baggage. So that's what I would use in this case. Now, when they say free seat selection, that's a little bit deceptive because yes, they will let you book a seat ahead of time for free, as opposed to for basic economy, they do not let you pick a seat until you check in 24 hours before, and then it's just basically whatever's left. You can choose from that. So it says that here you can select your seat for free. That's a little bit deceptive because yes, you can pick your seat, but the only ones that are available for free are kind of like middle seats, or like in the very back. So it's really like the lowest preference seats are the ones that you can select for free. You can pay extra to book your seats ahead of time if you want bulkhead or emergency exit or aisle or window, whatever your preferences are. You can select that here, but it will cost extra. Now, you can also select that on basic economy. So if you don't need to check a bag and you are booking a seat that's like $100, well, for each way, so that would still be $200. So it would like be $50 for the way there and $50 for the way back. Then basic economy would still end up being cheaper. In fact, I just did this recently on a trip that I took with a child, and I booked basic economy. But in basic economy, I then ended up paying $100 per person per leg, so $200 per person, to have premium seats. So we got bulkhead. So my ticket price was really the same as main cabin, and I still couldn't check a bag. However, to get those same seats in main cabin, I still would have had to pay like $150 extra. So it was still cheaper to go with basic economy, even though I then spent an extra $200 on reserving the seats, because to get those seats in main cabin was not going to be free. This free seat selection, like I said, it's a little deceptive. It's free seat selection of seats that I would not want to have. So I do book this, however, this class when I'm flying with a lot of kids or if it's for a long trip, because I'm going to want that checked bag. Now, when you fly internationally, the checked bag goes up to 50 pounds, 23 kilos. So that's actually a really good size. You can bring a lot of chocolate back for that. So see how it says extra legroom available for a fee. So the free seats are not included in that. So whether you go with this or that is really personal preference. But like I said, we're not ready yet to click continue and book, because here is where this awesome tool of Google Flight comes in. Because when you scroll down here, once you've selected your destination, and this is for this particular flight, if you scroll down before you selected these flights, it would have shown it in more general terms. But it will show you here the price history for the last 60 days. And you will see that this exact flight 19 days ago was only $669 as opposed to $1,155. And then there were a couple of other times when it was pretty low. So you can see that 19 days ago it was only $669. So when I determine whether I want to fly somewhere, I go to Google Flights, I plug in the information of where I want to go. I don't necessarily select the flights. I might do it a couple of windows earlier. Let me scoot back here. Come down here. Okay, here we go, because it has the price history there. So we can see here, you can pull up the date grid again if you want to maybe choose different dates. So this is a very helpful tool to decide, okay, it's cheapest if I fly out on this day and return on that day. So you can play around with that more. You have that, or you have the price graph here also. And this price graph looks a little bit different. It basically just shows you the this shows you the prices going forward. So not the price history, but like which dates are the lowest, like if you took this date. So there's all sorts of tools here that you can use here. And then here's the price history. So here, if we go, we can see that just across all airlines, not just the one we selected, but across all airlines, the lowest price was actually $445, and that was 15 days ago. Now, you can't get in a time machine and buy your ticket then, but it does give you an idea of what the prices range at like, and you can, if you're flexible, you can just tell yourself, well, I'm not going to book it today for $1,155. I'm going to wait till the deal gets really, really cheap again. So that kind of gives you a feel for when you look at today's price and you don't really know, is that a good price or not? This gives you an idea. Okay, well, it does go as low as $445. Now, this was probably not one of the best connections. This was probably one where you had to change planes. And unfortunately, there's no way to click on it and for it to tell us that, but it does give you some indication. So we're going to go back forward because you could also, like on this one, you could just, let's say we only want to track okay. We only want to track the nonstop flights. So now we can watch the price history for that. And the lowest for that was $586, which is half the price of what it is today, $1155. So this doesn't work if you have an emergency, some family emergency, and you have to fly out tomorrow. It's not going to work. But if you're flexible and if you have certain dates in mind, but you're waiting for the price to come down on those dates, then this is an awesome tool that you can select here. So then basically you can track the prices. And you can track the prices for this certain date, and then it will email you about it because it all goes through Google, Gmail. But you can even, without the dates, if we go back one more click here, it will just alert us where independent of the date. So let's say Phoenix to London, and we don't have any dates here. Let me go back one more here. Okay, so this is just Phoenix to London. It just saved this cheapest round trip with a direct flight was $1155. And basically it will now, so this is, it automatically plugged in those dates. So, but there's a way to do it where it just alerts you. And then basically you just sit back and wait. So on the trip that I recently took with one of my kids, I had tracked the prices like that, and we got it for about a third of the price of what it cost at full price. We got our tickets for around $600 each, as opposed to $1,800, which they cost like if you booked it 2 or 3 weeks in advance and you didn't have that flexibility. And like I said, in addition to that, I ended up paying $100 per person per leg to have these premium seats that were bulkhead, that were really convenient and up front. So if you book far enough out, you also have the benefit of really getting to pick good seats. Now, if you're not sure what is a good seat on an airplane, you can also just like Google search flight maps or airplane maps and seating maps, and it will tell you which of the seats are good seats that offer bulkhead. So I'm going to go back over here and turn off my screen sharing because so basically, let me show one last thing here. So basically now these prices are tracked. You can do the date grid or the price graph, and the price history I think is really the most valuable tool because like let's look for a different one. Let's do Frankfurt. Okay, Frankfurt, Germany. And then for the date, we're just going to pick different dates. Let's say that we are flying out on March this, and we are staying for, these prices are not good right now. Let's say we're staying for a month. Okay. So we have 586. There's different flights. They all have one stop. The only airline that flies direct is Condor, and they only fly direct in the summer. So that's not in March. That would not be until end of May that they start flying directly. So I can, again, just set a search alert here, and I will be notified when those, oh, here's that click. So instead of just locked to these dates, you can then enable any dates. And when the flight prices from Phoenix to Frankfurt drop low, I will be notified by email because, again, it's tied into the Gmail. So this is a really useful tool. I mean, I was notified last week that the flights from Phoenix to Munich with United slash Lufthansa partner alliance were like, I don't know, it was like $550 a person, which is about a quarter of what it usually costs. They typically go more for $2,000, and I'm glad if I ever get them under $1,000, like $900. So they were really, really cheap just a couple of weeks ago. Didn't book because I have no travel plans, because of course a lot more goes into travel than being able to afford the flights. But it is a really helpful tool, and I do everything through Google Flights. Now, the reason why you want to end up booking with the airline as opposed to a travel agency like Expedia or whatever travel agency you use is because when you book directly with the airline, should issues arise, you need to change your flight, you need to cancel your flight. There's an issue from the airline side, like they have to cancel the flight. If you book directly with them, with the airline, it is a lot easier to negotiate with them. I'm going to turn off the screen here. It will be a lot easier to negotiate with them than it is if you have to go through like Expedia. Good luck trying to get a hold of anybody at Expedia. So whenever possible, book the flight direct with the airline, and it does not make it more expensive. The travel agencies give you the same price as the airline. They get it cheaper from the airline because they buy basically seats in bulk, and then they keep the difference between what they paid for the seat in bulk versus what they sell it for. But you as the end user don't actually get it cheaper. Now, I'm going to have to shut this down if this clown, let me see if I can block him from the other one. Give me just a second here. You cannot see my screen because I turned that off, but I'm still here. Give me just a second. We're going to go to Studio. Content. I hope this does not mess it up. Let's see here. All right, we're going to report this guy, hide user on this channel, and then we are going to remove all his comments. All right, so I think the clown has been removed, at least on the YouTube end. There. All right. So are you still seeing me live? Because I had to open the YouTube one in another window. So if you could let me know that you can still see me. So the reason why I like to book with the airline, like I said, because if issues arise, and sometimes they do, you have a lot more negotiating power. Last year, my daughters and I went to New York City, and we flew Southwest, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Southwest. We flew Southwest, and they really, 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 really messed us over. I mean, the flight was supposed to be like a 6-hour flight, and we were on the plane for over 11 hours. And the seatbelt sign was on for like 10 and a half of those hours. So it was a very inconvenient, very bad flight. And they didn't refund us the flight, but they gave us like full flight credit for it. So each of the girls and I still have like a $400 flight credit with Southwest. Had we booked that through an agency, which in the case of Southwest you can't, but just for sake of the argument, let's go with that, then there would have been no recourse. These travel agencies would not have given us like any kind of credit. It's just, well, like, sucks to be you. So whenever possible, you want to book direct with the airline. Now, I want to talk about something else, and that's jet lag. And I don't think this is unique to me. I think this method will work for anybody, and it's in line with what the airlines do. So I think that because they've done all these studies and spent a lot of money looking into how to optimize flights that are long-haul flights, like transatlantic flights, or maybe even trans-Pacific. I've never flown across the ocean that way. They spend a lot of time researching how to make it the least traumatic on the body, because you want to have a good experience when you travel. Because if when you get there, you're just like sick and groggy and asleep and you can't have a fun vacation, you're not going to fly again. So airlines have really spent a lot of time on this. And it works. So I don't think this works just for me. I think it works for anybody. So I'm going to tell you how to combat the jet lag. So basically, you have to deal with jet lag differently whether you're traveling westbound or eastbound. And basically, that's because the sun travels this way. And if you're traveling eastbound, you're basically flying into the sun, meaning your day gets a lot shorter. You're losing time traveling east. And when you're traveling westbound, you're traveling with the sun. So you're kind of traveling with the day as you go through the time zones. And even though you left midday and you had a 12-hour flight, you still arrive in the afternoon because you traveled with the sun and you gain that time that you lost on the way eastbound. You gain that back on the way westbound. So there's a different strategy for traveling eastbound, which means you're flying into the sun. And while you're flying towards the day moves this way, and it makes for a very, very short day or night, basically. And as opposed to if the sun is going this way and you're going with it, the day kind of travels with you and you arrive not at the same time because the plane is a little slower than the sun moves, but you arrive not that much later than you left, basically. So for traveling eastbound, when you're losing time, you leave here at one time, and the next time zone is like 9 hours ahead of you, 10 hours ahead. So we just use London. So let's talk about London. London right now is 7 hours ahead. Is it 7 hours ahead? 7 hours ahead. 7 hours ahead of Phoenix right now. Usually, in half the year, 8, because we don't do summer and winter time. So 7 hours ahead. Basically, what you want to do is you want to leave in the evening. Let's say it's Monday and you're flying to London. You want to leave on Monday evening. Typically around like a 7, 8 p.m. flight is a good time if it's a direct flight. If you have a connection, you want to leave earlier in the afternoon. Let's say we're connecting in Denver, so that when we then leave out of Denver, we want to do that in the evening. So if my Denver flight leaves for a European destination at 7 p.m., then, I would be leaving here around like 3 or 4 p.m., getting to Denver an hour and a half later, making my connection. And then basically whenever the transatlantic or the long haul flight is leaving, you want that one to be in the evening. So you want to time it to where the long flight is in the evening. And on these long flights, they do feed you, and they start out, if you take an evening flight, by feeding you dinner. And it's really important to prevent jet lag that you think of yourself not as being in the time zone of whatever is at home. So when you get there, you don't really like, well, in Arizona right now, it's 2:55 p.m. You want to think in local time. Right here where I am, it is right now 12 noon or 1 p.m. You want to think that way. So when you get on an evening flight, let's say it's 7 o'clock, you board, you take off, 8 o'clock. By the time they feed you dinner, it's about 9 p.m. And then they will ask you to close the shades, even though it's pitch dark by this time. They will ask you to close all the window shades, and they will turn off the lights and dim the lights to minimum in the cabin. And the reason is they want to simulate a night. And it won't be hard for you to simulate a night because it is now where you left in your normal time zone that you're coming from, 9, 10, 11 p.m., and you're ready to sleep. So sleep. Close your eyes, recline your seat, put on a neck pillow, whatever, eye shades, and sleep as well as you can. It will be a short night, and it will not be as comfortable as sleeping in your own bed, unless you're traveling first or business, but I don't think most of us are. So it's not going to be a very long night because remember, you're flying into the sun while the sun is coming this way. And that's why they have you close the window shades, because just a few hours after, they feed you at 9, 10 p.m. on the plane, just a few short hours later, it's going to be light in that plane because while you were traveling eastbound, the sun was coming westbound. And what was now your time when you left like 4 p.m., well, you've flown into a time zone where it's now 4 a.m. You've now flown into a time zone where it's like 7, 8, 9 a.m. But they keep the window shades closed so that you can, and they keep them closed until about an hour, maybe an hour and a half before landing, just to maximize how much you can sleep. So whenever that flight, you leave Phoenix and you're flying to London. In our example, we left at 7 p.m. They fed us dinner at 9. We closed our eyes at 10. So we are now 3 hours into this flight. There's 6 more hours left on this flight. So that's 6 hours. We're going to spend 5 of that sleeping. And when we spend the 5 of that sleeping and we now wake up, for our body, were we still in Arizona time, it would be like 3 in the morning. But where we are currently at, which would be maybe over, we would probably just be coming in like across the North Sea there. We would be approaching Ireland. We maybe near Iceland is where we would be. Local Iceland time at that time will be about 10 a.m. That's why it's like really bright outside. So even though for our body it's only 3 a.m. in Arizona, we slept 5 hours. It's kind of a short night. We didn't sleep well. It's kind of crummy. But they will turn on the lights, they will open the blinds, and they will serve breakfast. And in fact, they even have these lights on the plane that kind of dim on, like the sun is rising, like this yellow light will gradually, over the course of a few minutes, turn on and get brighter. Can anybody here still see and hear me? Because can somebody give me a thumbs up that you can still see and hear me? Because I'm not seeing it here. Can you guys all still see and hear? Oh, you know what? I think I have this off. Let me type something. Can you all still see and hear me? All right. Because this one is not working on my end. I hope I didn't shut that off. I hope that's working. Well, I'm not able to see comments, so I'm hoping this works. But as the light comes back on, they will then feed breakfast about an hour before we land. And it's important that you treat it as, not as it's 3 a.m., but you treat it as it is now noon local time when you land. So you had a short night, you had a crummy night, and it's noon when you arrive, which is good because now you only have to make it through a short day. Basically, you're going to just stay up the rest of that day. Don't go to bed too early. Go to bed no sooner than 9 p.m. And even though it is now, when it's 9 p.m. there and we left from Arizona, it would only be 2 p.m., you will be able to go to sleep because it's dark, because you didn't sleep enough the night before. And if you think of as being in the local time, it will be really easy to go to sleep. So go to sleep around 9, you wake up the next day, their local time, and you are perfectly fine. So the secret for traveling eastbound is pick an evening flight, play along with whatever time zone you're in, treat it like that's where you're at. Don't think about what it is back home. Don't sleep when you arrive until you go to bed that first night. Whenever you get in, stay up that entire day and then sleep that first night. That's the secret for traveling eastbound. The secret for traveling westbound, sadly, is the exact opposite because you're traveling with the day. Rather than having a short day, you're going to have a very long day. So traveling westbound, you're going to stay awake. So you want to pick a morning flight. Anything up until noon is a good flight for traveling westbound. Leave in the morning, leave by noon, and you arrive in the early to mid afternoon, maybe early evening. And then basically you just stay awake till you get home until 8 or 9 p.m. that night, and then go to bed. You're going to be really tired because you just had like a 36-hour day instead of a 24-hour day, and then sleep that first night. And you will wake up the next morning and not have jet lag. Now, there's one huge caveat to this. And this plan works perfectly only if you're not traveling with children. Now, I'm going to check something really quick here because I am wondering if I can see the comments in the studio here. So basically, if you have children, keeping them awake on the flight home for a 11, 12-hour flight is just not a good idea, right? Like, who wants to do that? So if you have kids, sadly, they're going to have to sleep on the way home, right? Okay. Can you still see and hear me? Yes. Okay. Everybody's saying yes. So I can't see your comments anymore. I can see them over here now. So I'll just stay on this port. I'll just stay on this portal where I can see them. So I apologize if I'm not responding to things because I'm not seeing them. But basically, the caveat when you fly with a child, let's say you fly with a lap child, not like a teenager or something, but a lap baby, they're going to want to sleep. You're going to want them to sleep on the way home because it would be absolute misery to have a child awake in your lap for 11 hours. So then when you get home and it's 4 or 5 p.m. in the evening, they're probably not ready to go to sleep again that night, but just a few hours later at 9 p.m. Unfortunately, they might be up late. So that will throw you off because you will kind of be off on theirs. But even so, when we came back in December with Oliver from Germany, we got in at like 5 or 6 p.m. And he went back to sleep at 9 that night and just slept the whole night and no jet lag at all. So basically, just to reiterate, flying eastbound, leave in the evening, sleep on the plane between the dinner they will feed you and the breakfast, even though it's only a short night. When you arrive at your destination in the early afternoon, stay awake for the rest of that day, then go to bed, just like the locals do. You will wake up the next morning with 0 jet lag. And then when you come back westward bound, stay awake, travel with the sun. It'll just be a long day. However many hours time difference there are, that's by how many hours your day is being extended. So if you were to come back from London, 7-hour time difference, you're basically tagging an extra 7 hours onto your day. So you're going to be extra tired. But if you can, just push through. Or if you do sleep on the plane, just take a little nap, like maybe nap for an hour just to take the edge off. And then when you get home in the early afternoon, push through again, stay awake until you go to bed that evening, and you should wake up the next morning and not have any jet lag. So I used to do that before I had kids, when I would fly long haul, and I never had jet lag from that. The airlines kind of, like I said, they optimize it for that. That's why the eastbound flights are usually in the evening, and the westbound flights are usually in the morning. And also the way they feed the meals, like it's either a lunch and a dinner if you're flying westbound, or it is a dinner and a breakfast when you're flying eastbound. So they kind of help get you into that mental game and that mental state of thinking of yourself in those times, and you will not get jet lag. Now, I did just fly last week internationally, and it was the first time since I've been married. During the time of my marriage, I try to count. It's been either 9 or 10 times that I've flown across the Atlantic. Out of those 9 or 10 times, this was the first time that I did not fly with a lap baby. I left Ollie home to be cared for by those that were here at home, and it went really well. I was gone for 4 nights. I don't think they slept. I slept really well, and 0 jet lag, just none. It was really, really good. So if you follow the airline's protocol, which I try to explain here, I'm not sure how well I'm explaining it, you should be good to go. And I would encourage you, if you can, to travel with your kids, because you make wonderful memories. You can show them the world, but also it makes for a better gift, I think, than more things you buy. Consumerism, stuff that you have to store in your house, stuff that you have to take care of. Anything you own, you kind of pay a tax, a mental tax for it, by having to take care of it, just being burdened for, having to find a place for it, taking care of it. So I think that experiences over things is really a great way to go. And I think you learn a lot when you travel, and especially traveling with kids. They can learn to be flexible. That's rule number 1 in travel, is be flexible. So anyway, I can now see the comments over here. If anybody has a comment that they would like to ask, this would be the time to ask. Sorry about the clown in the thread. Sons of Thunder, yes, amen to traveling. So it's hard when you have little kids. I can only do it now because I'm not pregnant right now, and I can either bring the lap baby or leave him home if it's just a short trip. So if you are in the trenches and all your kids are little, don't feel bad if you can't do this. Your time will come. Even with my 12 kids, I've been able to do a lot more travel recently. I cannot fly when I'm pregnant. So I go through stages where in between pregnancies, I do travel. And then when I am pregnant and postpartum, now that I'm in my 40s, just the hormonal and the anxiety is so bad that I cannot fly. There's a video on my channel if you're interested. In 2019, I tried to fly to Germany, and I did, but it didn't end well. I really had just like a mental breakdown on the flight just from, I get severe claustrophobia when I'm pregnant. I kind of have borderline claustrophobia all the time. But when I'm pregnant, I become claustrophobic about being on the planet. Like, get me off this planet. And it's just 100% mental. So when I'm not pregnant, like I am right now, not pregnant, then it makes it a lot easier to travel. So anyway, Jenna, I hope you do get to visit the US with 2 little ones. Don't be intimidated. Traveling with kids is not as hard as you might think. I don't mean you personally, just if you've never traveled with little kids and you look at online, you'll often find on Facebook or maybe on a YouTube short, people like, oh, this woman came on with her kids and it's just going to be a horrible flight. It is so not true. In all my flying I've done, there's usually other kids and babies on board. The flight we took in November, we had like the bassinet seats, so there were other moms in our row that also had the bassinet seats that Lufthansa offers for moms and babies, and all the babies did fabulous. I don't think I've ever been on a flight where a baby just screamed the whole time. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does, but it's a rare exception because you know how to get your kids happy, because the plane gets them to sleep, because they're excited for traveling, or they know that, this is not a good time to scream while everybody is sitting around them quietly. So don't let the kids, if you are able to pay for the tickets, don't let them deter you from traveling. I've flown alone, meaning one adult only, to Germany with 3 little kids when John was 11 months old. So my older boys would have been almost 3 and just turned 5. And that was fine, especially if you're younger. I don't know that I could do it now, but when I was younger, I could. So don't let that deter you from traveling. You can do it. Now, you can only have one lap baby. So if you are trying to travel alone with twins, only one of those would be able to sit in your lap and you'd have to buy a ticket for the other one. But as far as being nervous how the kids will do it, don't let that deter you. It's really fun traveling with them. And they do help make it easy with strollers and things like that. Jana, those seats, not all airlines have them, and they only have them on long haul flights. But you can Google that ahead of time. It's called like a bassinet seat, and they have them on United. They have them on Lufthansa. I imagine they have them on American and probably British Air. Probably all the big carriers have them for their long haul flights. So those are the planes that instead of one aisle, they have 2 aisles, and it goes 3 seats, aisle, 4 seats, aisle, 3 seats. So the 4 seats in the middle, basically the middle section, they have bassinet seats in the bulkhead. So you get extra leg room, and they put a bassinet, they hang it from the bulkhead, the wall in front of you, and you can lay the baby in there. And it's so helpful to just have somewhere to put the baby, even if you end up holding them. It's really nice for them to be there. Okay, so 4-year-old and a 12-year-old in a wheelchair. See, that I can't speak to that. I would imagine that the airplane staff helps with that, but I don't know anything about that, so I'd hate to give the wrong advice. But yeah, anyway. Random question, can anyone recommend any books for couples who are engaged? Yeah, if anybody has a good book, I would like to see that recommended. There is one that I like. Let me look that up real quick because now I don't remember what it's called. It's a really good book. Let me find that really. All right, I have to try to find what it is called. It's an older book. I don't know that I can find it now. I don't. You know what? It would be in my history. Let me go to. You can't see my screen now, I hope, because. Oh, let me see. Yep, it's turned off. Okay. But once I pull up the book, I will then show it to you. I'm just going to go to my orders and pull that up. I think that should be in my orders. Oh, I think I found it. Yep, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to turn on my screen showing real quick. Let's turn this on real quick. Let's go to Amazon. So this is a good book. Shanti Feldham, the Highly Happy Marriage. This is a really good book. But she has another book, and that's the one I'm trying to. So it's called For Women Only, and then there's also For Men Only. So depending on whether you're looking at it as from a man's perspective or women's perspective, these 2 books are really, really good. I'm trying to find the For Men Only, and I'm not finding it. But basically, that's a good one that I recommend I'm going to turn this off again. Anyway, so that was it for today's stream. If you have any other questions, let me see if there are any other questions. So Jenna, where would you be flying from and where would you be going to? How long of a flight are we talking for? I'm curious to see their grandparents. And I think it's really important to make time for the kids to be around their grandparents, because I think all of us who had good grandparents want our kids to have that same relationship. For my cookware, how do I feel about tin foil and copper cookware? Okay, tin foil, you're not supposed to use it. Don't use the aluminum pans that are disposable. Don't cover your food with aluminum. If it's touching the food, it's not good for you. Don't use it. That being said, do I use it? Yes, sometimes I use it, unfortunately. Now, I try not to use it like if I'm cooking ribs. I don't put down aluminum to make cleanup easier on my food cooks on it. I don't do that. But sometimes when I reheat it, I put the aluminum over it. Sometimes I do use disposable aluminum pans. Not perfect. You shouldn't use it, but it's not good. That's why I also don't use aluminum bakeware. But again, you know, your sanity is worth something too. And then copper is supposed to be safe. I don't have any copper cookware, except a lot of my stainless steel has like a copper layer inside for even heat distribution, because it's kind of expensive. I kind of don't know how I feel about it. You know, I don't want them like 10 years from now coming out and saying, turns out copper is too reactive. And I think it like takes special care for cleaning, which I also don't want to learn about that and get into that. So I don't use any copper, and I shouldn't be using any aluminum. Okay, Jenna, long flight, Bremen to probably Frankfurt and then on to Indianapolis. That's not too bad at all. No, that's not bad at all, Jenna. You can do it. Indianapolis. So you would probably fly. You can get a direct flight from Frankfurt to Chicago. So I would say that's probably your best way to do it. Or maybe there is a direct flight closer to you from maybe Hamburg or Hanover. That might be closer. But I would say, so here's another tip I'm going to share with those of you thinking about visiting the US, and it fits in with this video. I meant to mention this earlier. If you can't get a direct flight, let's say you're trying to fly into somewhere in the United States, Indianapolis or Phoenix or some other city that's not big enough to have a direct flight. For example, Phoenix, even though we are one of the largest cities in the US, we only get from Europe direct flights from Paris and London, and May through September from Frankfurt. Those are the only European cities that we can fly direct to. So only 2 of them, and then half the year, 3 of them. What you want to avoid at all cost is changing planes in the US. Because if you're coming into the US, and let's say you're flying into Chicago, and then from Chicago you're connecting to Indianapolis, you have to go through customs at your first port of arrival. Now let me explain that a little bit, because normally, let's say I were to fly from here to Florida, Miami, Florida. So let's say my first flight is from here to Newark, New Jersey, and then my second flight is from New Jersey to Florida, just for grins. You know, let's pretend there's no direct flight. My luggage would be checked all the way through. I would get on the flight in Phoenix, check my bags, and the airline would move my bags when I get to Newark, and they would then give me my bags when I arrive at my final destination. And if I flew to Europe like that, let's say I fly from Phoenix to Munich. And when I fly from Phoenix to Munich, I'm going to connect in Denver, or I'm going to connect in London Heathrow, or I'm going to connect in Frankfurt. Let's say I connect through any of these cities, or I connect through Seattle. I check my bag in Phoenix, and I get my bag at my final destination. Never have to bother with it again. However, when you fly into the US, because the US is like kind of hyper about this, you have to go through customs at your first port of arrival. There are no exceptions. Doesn't matter whether you're a citizen, doesn't matter whether you or anybody. When we just came back in December from Germany, there was no direct flight, so we had to connect through Denver. When we got to Denver, and that's what I mentioned why I want to have a longer layover in Denver. When we got to Denver, all our bags, the airline gets all the bags off the plane, puts them on the baggage belt. You have to take your bags and you have to go through passport control and you have to go through customs with your bag yourself. Because you're basically responsible. If you're smuggling in something that you're not supposed to bring, you're going to be busted. The airline doesn't just check it through to your final destination, because in Phoenix, there's no international check. So at the first port of arrival, you have to go through customs, you have to go through immigration. And then if you then connect and you want to recheck your bag, you get your bag from the belt, you go through the passport control, you go through customs and immigration, you put your bag back on the baggage belt, it goes back on the plane, and then you catch your connecting flight. That can take a few hours with kids. So I would never make a connection in the US coming from outside the US with less than 2 hours. And that's considering it's a small airport like Denver. If it were a big airport like Chicago or O'Hare or Newark, New Jersey, I would probably go closer to 3 or maybe even 4 hours, because you might be going like from one end of the airport all the way to the other end for your connecting flight. And yeah, they don't care about whether you have kids and it takes you a long time or not. So if you're flying into the US, Jenna, and you're flying, you want to, if at all possible, not connect in the US. If you can avoid a connection in the US, avoid a connection in the US. Even if that means flying into Chicago or O'Hare and then, like, say, having to drive in a rental car for another 3 hours, that's probably better than catching a connecting flight to Indianapolis, if that makes sense. So if I were you, I would look into the closest connecting flights, which is probably Frankfurt to Chicago, and just, take the ICE to Frankfurt or get a ride there, and then get a rental car in Chicago and drive to Indianapolis, Indiana. Or possibly there might be a different international airport that's closer to Indianapolis, because that's quite a ways from Chicago. But if possible, you want to avoid connecting in the US because of that issue with having to go through customs and immigration at the first port of arrival. Okay, anyway, I think that my stream is not doing well. It is cutting out, so I'm going to land this plane. Thank you for joining today. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I will see you next week.